talk over there. Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for coming to this informational meeting so you can better understand the direction the directors and management would like to take your co-op. My name is Kent Heinen, Board Chairman of Nemaha County Co-op. Along with the directors, we have Mike Bryant, would you stand please? Vice Chairman is Mike Bryant. We have Craig Allison, Terry Bishop, Ross Plumberg, and our CEO, Bobby Martin. And from Ag Partners, we have CEO Stan Remington. Stan, would you introduce your board members?
Thank you, Kent. At this time, I'd like to introduce our board members that are present. Mr. Jason Taylor is our chairman. Mark Meyer is our secretary. Ron Ice, Jim Scobie, and Neil Frost. I know a lot of the employees are standing, but if you just raise your hand in the back, some of the employees from Ag Partners that are here to join us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Nemaha County Co-op has been in business for over 80 years and has served us well. It has been very successful because you who have been doing business and continue to do business with the co-op. In the past 80 years, there have been many changes. Just as in your own operations, you have made changes to stay competitive, so must your co-op. The board of directors, along with management, are always looking into the future for the benefit of your cooperative. Management, as well as the board of directors, during many of our meetings, has spent time discussing different options to move the co-op in the right direction. So looking forward, the Board of Directors believes that combining Nemaha County Co-op with Ag Partners Co-op is the right step. These two cooperatives mirror each other in many ways. Both are very successful, and after reviewing all aspects of the two co-ops from a financial and equity standpoint, are more identical than we had imagined. This will be an equal combining of the two cooperatives, creating a stronger organization that will continue to serve you. This is an opportunity to keep our co-op as local as possible. I would also point out that the name being Ag Partners, this is still your co-op, and your amount of equity will not change. The Board of Directors at Nemaha County Co-op, as well as the Board of Directors of Ag Partners Co-op, have unanimously voted to bring this unification forward to be voted on by their memberships. I would like to thank the Board of Directors and management from both cooperatives for the amount of work that has been put into bringing this agreement together. At this time, Stan Remington and Bobby Martin, along with Tim Doherty, our consultant, will give their presentation. Thank you.
Before we get started, can everyone hear me back there? We want to introduce Tim Doherty, formerly of Land O'Lakes. He was both our representative for Land O'Lakes. He did a lot of projects for both companies. Very lots of experience in the agriculture industry for lots of years. Actually, his farmland and his plants today. He's did a very good job of guiding them through the bankruptcy process. But Tim did some of the presentation for us, most of the presentation. He also has helped us with the process on the equity, which is very, very important to you guys, and very, very important to this transaction. So with that, this is the member informational meetings to combine the both companies. Dan Remington, maybe if you would just tell a little bit about yourself before we get going.
Yep, I have been with Ag Partners, just had my 6th year anniversary with Ag Partners Cooperative. I started June 12th, and this is my 6th year. I grew up in western Kansas, was a farm kid, graduated from Fort Hays State University. I lived up in northwest Iowa for about 5 years and had the opportunity to come back to a greener, most of the time, part of Kansas versus the semi-arid west that my brother and his family and his son farm out there today, Bobby. So,
With that, we'll get started.
the membership proposal is the combination of Nemaha County Co-op Association and Ag Partners Cooperative into one single business unit.
The why, of course, the why is the most important, probably why you guys are here. And most importantly is looking for the future and looking to our future. You always want to be able to pick the partner instead of being forced to pick a partner. And we're both in that case. We don't have to do anything today, but looking forward, Ag Partners has always been a great neighbor of Nemaha County Co-op. They've always been a good partner. Changing agriculture, as you all know, it just continues to change. A competitive pressure from local co-ops that are getting really, really big around us to the region, to some independents that are putting a lot of pressure. Doesn't matter where you go in the country, it's that way. Economics, the farm incomes, as you all know, are down. Our margins are down. Relevancy to the owners and members, being able to have what you need when you need it, and that's product, that's equipment to be able to have that product. It's getting more and more difficult on our own. Efficiencies of scale and scope, being able to buy them larger quantities and having that equipment to do it. The efficiently and effectively positioned service and technologies. Boy, the technology is just incredible, as you all know, that's coming online. And if you're looking forward in the future, today, there's just a lot of different programs you can get on. You can get on climate, you can get an R7, they're all separate. And there's a big scramble to try and pull it all together into one umbrella, which what Winfield, or major suppliers, is attempting to do. And as we sit today, both of us individually would have a hard time going on to that. That's that, being able to grab that technology that's out there and be able to have it for you out there, the producer. Access and maintain talent, and probably a lot more opportunity for the people that are involved already, and then that future talent that's out there to come in. The more complicated and the more in-depth that we get for you guys, it's going to take more and more talent.
How do the companies compare? Land O'Lakes, Joe Nelson with Land O'Lakes ran a comparison of the two companies and then combined the two companies together. This was a request from each independent co-op's board of directors to look at this to see what the similarities were. We always knew we were relatively similar, size and scope, but we just wanted someone to look at it. They drew historical data up to current data, and they compiled that together to see what the companies looked like. And it did. It was point in case to how similar the companies are. Similar in size, financial strength is similar, our equity is similar, income, working capital, EBITDA, income before income tax, depreciation, and amortization. Service offerings are very similar. But when you get to the pie charts, when you take them independently and then you put them together, what came back was really what your board of directors thought. They are equal, and that's what we're trying to do through the whole process. And as we look at governance, as we look at the equity piece, the board of directors really felt it needed to be equal one side to the other. But as you look at book value of the equity, it's 50-50. The market value, 50-50. Some of the others get just a little bit, but at the end of the day, they are very, very similar companies. One of the most important was the EBITDA that we talked about being 50-50. That is the earnings. We strip out everything else because sometimes depreciation is set up different, how we accelerate it and what we do. It really takes that out of the equation and it looks at just the true company. And once again, you can see it is absolutely equal. When they did this comparison, they took what the actual value, cash value of each organization was versus their equity position today on the balance sheet. Ag Partners was overvalued. Our actual cash value was 8.0% over. Our equity on the balance sheet, Nemaha County's was 8.1. Couldn't hardly believe that. Bobby and I asked the question of Joe, how many times do you see these companies being this similar, but how many times do you see them being above what their equity position is for the cash value of the company? And Joe's response?
Very few.
Extremely few. Usually it is a large company taking over a smaller company. This is very unique in what we're doing. Two very financially solid companies coming together as one. A combination of equals, as it says below, two strong parties together to become an even more viable company. These are our locations. The red, obviously, are your guys's. And I always do this with Bobby. I'll start up top and bounce around just to make sure he can stay with me. But
Out there is our new Summit location, just 7 miles from here. Axtell, Baileyville, Seneca, Centralia, Corning, Belize. Down south, we have St. Mary's, Bellevue, and Wamego.
And then ours, I can't reach it up top. That is our Tarkio location in Missouri. We have two locations in Nebraska, Humboldt, Nebraska, and Rulo, Nebraska. If you come down, there's Reserve, and then Padonia, Hamlin, our Sabetha location, Hiawatha. This is White Cloud, and we just purchased, it's an agronomy service over at Fanning is what we call it, just outside of Troy and Highland. Robinson, Denton, this is Willis, Powhatan, and then we do have an asset in Topeka Terminal.
How will the new entity compete in the larger market? It's the basic premise of putting the two together. A stronger, more efficient company will be better able to compete with the other partners and majors around. The stronger you are in these areas, the more important it is. The strategic placement of utilization of assets is a key ingredient. When you look alone, you think more of like on every location on a local basis. When you start combining, it changes the whole picture. Can you put a fertilizer plant somewhere that really helps out 4 or 5 locations versus one? It really changes the picture. Agriculture continuously changes. As you all know, anticipating those changes, continuously repositioning the company will help us provide the products and services needed. This company a long time ago, as well as Ag Partners, look forward, created Midwest Ag, which is doing extremely well, having one of its best years ever, but they did the same thing. Will we be able to have the assets that you guys and producers are going to need in the future? It's that same thing, repositioning yourself. Combined skills of our employees will enhance the ability to provide service. We first started looking at this. Sometimes you put two together and you go, boy, we got two identical employee groups. This is going to be difficult to put them together. In this case, we started looking. There was a lot of people that we kind of had a hole in our company. Ag Partners filled that. Ag Partners had a hole that filled. Very, very good. Sometimes you don't have that. Sometimes you have to go outside the company to find some of those people. We feel like we have all the talent inside. It was very, very surprising and a very good surprise.
Yeah, Bobby and I went through an exercise pretty early on. After the two chairmen of the company, Bobby and I got together with the chairmen, and Bobby and I obviously talked about this and that management group and clear on down, and it was amazing how those holes will fill, as Bobby had mentioned here before. What will the combined company be called? The combined organization, as Kent mentioned in his speech, will be the name of Ag Partners Cooperative, Inc. Nemaha County, your cooperative had just purchased a new office here probably 6 months ago. It is a great office, it's a great space, and that will be the new address of the new entity. Our logo will encompass both of the legacy cooperatives. We will have the old Ag Partners emblem logo, but we will incorporate the legacy handshake of Nemaha County through that. We don't have that picture up here yet because it has not been cleared with a trademark through our attorney. As soon as it is, we will bring that forward. But I said in a couple of these meetings, Bobby and I don't look good in pinstripes, and we want to put something up here that we get in trouble for. But we blame it on our board chairmen, wouldn't we? But that will be the logo of the new organization. It encompasses it. I think Ag Partners, the last 2 years ago, we went through an exercise. We created within the group probably 30 different names to bring forward as a new name. I think there was about 2 or 3 that came out of that pool that we could legally use. And I don't know that they were really the ones that we wanted, but I think that is what we are. We are partners in ag with the membership, and that is our true commitment.
How about costs and expenses? Some costs will just rapidly, we got duplicate insurances on some. Other expenses, like 2 combined systems, you'll be able to combine those. That will save some money over time. But some of that also increases, taking those 2 systems and bringing them down to 1. You got to pull all the data from one to the other, so that right away is an added cost. So it's really difficult first to get a handle on that. We do know that combined purchasing will enable us to leverage our suppliers, since we will be bringing a larger demand base. That's really huge when you even just think about our line of credits. We had a $35–40 million line of credit. Ag Partners has a $40 million to $50 million line of credit. Combined, we'll have a lower interest rate, which is part of that. It's that way with just about everything that we do. The larger volume you're able to buy, you can leverage your supplier.
What will the makeup of the board of directors be with the new organization? Currently today, Nemaha County has 7 board of directors. Ag Partners has 9 board of directors and 2 associates. When we start the new organization September 1st, Ag Partners will reduce down to 7 board of directors, and we will do away with the 2 associate members. Bobby and I think at one time we would really like to see the board associates be a part of the new board, but not right now. We will start with 14, 7 from each side, and that is quite a few board members. So we'll get rid of the associates to start and hopefully bring them back as we get this down. But we'll start with 7 for a total of 14 from each legacy cooperative. There will be 3 districts which have been created to assure equitable representation. We do have a map on the next slide that we will show you that makes it up. The board will reduce by 2 members in 2019 and 2 members in 2020 to create a board size of 10 individuals at the end. Board members will serve 3-year terms with a total of 4 terms. These are the director districts. The NCCA Legacy Cooperative will have a District 1, which is north, and then it will have a District 2, which will be south of the old Legacy Cooperative to make up that territory. There will be 2 in District 1, 2 in District 2, and 1 member at large at the end to create 5 for Nemaha County Legacy Cooperative. Ag Partners, the old Legacy Co-op from Ag Partners, will be in District 3, and we will have 5 board of directors at the end once we make the reduction.
My accounts and grain accounts, both companies will have audits fairly close to the beginning date of September 1st for the new company. Where our Nemaha County Co-op's year ends July 31st, so we'll have a month to deal with. Ag Partners is 8/31, so we'll have a pretty good clean off and cut off. All agreements will be transferred to the combined company, whether it's grain contracts, stored grain, receivables, payables, anything that you're doing with the co-op, it will transfer over. Fertilizer prepaid contracts, prepaid propane contracts, anything that you have will transfer over.
What is the impact on employees? All employees will remain employed by the combined company. Both companies run lean today. Good, capable, and skilled employees are difficult to find. Those we have, we want to retain. I think one of the biggest things with the 2 organizations going together is it gives us an opportunity for some of the younger employees that start out in the cooperative to hopefully grow and maintain and have a full career throughout that cooperative. It is hard to retain. Today alone is to have those movements to where they can move up and be promoted through the company. But I think together it allows us to do that and hopefully retain local talent throughout and hopefully for a whole career. The combination of the 2 companies, it is not an exercise to reduce people. By no means, people in both organizations are extremely, extremely hard to find, and by all means, we need to keep them. As the company changes, its needs for talent will evolve, as I was talking about, as in any business, needs for and roles of its people will evolve, and it will give us an opportunity if we are more size and more scope.
My equity, probably the equity piece, when you think about cooperatives, it's one of the most unique things. As an independent company, you don't get any equity when you do business with them. With a cooperative, you get a piece that's paid in cash if we make money, and you get equity, and then that equity gets revolved back to you. So of course, this is most important in this talks that we have, but it's also important on a monthly basis. It's talked about in your board meetings on a monthly basis. It's talked about in every board planning session. How are you going to balance that? Because we have to. That's the due date on that equity. It needs to be paid back to you. In this case, all equity is going to be honored on a dollar-for-dollar basis. No write-downs, no adjustments. It's all coming across. If you have $10,000 in the old company, you have $10,000 in the new company. But there are two different systems, two different equity systems, so we have to have a way to put them together, to pull them together. So you have to have the process to pull them together. It has to be neutral. It has to have the parties retain the position relative to their equity retirement. It gives no advantage to either one of the equity systems. And any change has to be tempered with a transition period instead of just chopping off right then. And so Stan will talk in the next couple slides about that transition process.
Bobby had talked about the two different equities systems that are set up today. Two co-ops, two programs. Nemaha County Equity Retirement is based on age of patron. Upon reaching age 70, you may request payout of equity one time. And then at age 80, a patron may request payout of equity one time. Equity and stock are paid upon death. Ag Partners Equity Retirement is based on age of equity, oldest paid first. Once again, equity and stock are paid upon death.
The equity transition, so getting, just for example, our shares are, Nemaha County Co-op shares are 10 shares at $100 for $1,000 total stock. Ag Partners is 20 shares at $50 par value at $1,000, so it's the same 1,000, but there's difference in the par value, so we got to switch those two systems. So to be able to do that, we're going to take all of Nemaha County Co-op stock, each one of them, put it in one credit, and then we'll divide it up accordingly to where it needs to go. Members will be required in the new company to hold 20 shares of voting common stock at $50 par value, or a total of $1,000, just like before. If you're a new member coming in, you will have to buy 10 shares at 50, so a $500 cash investment, but you will be able to earn the rest of it. Basically, both companies, you were able to earn part of your stock as well. The remainder will be into the patches process. So Nemaha County's co-ops, when you're signing, it's going to first go to that's 20 shares, $1,000, and if anything over above that will be put into an equity ledger credit, just like it's very similar to what we had before. NCCA owners who don't have the $1,000 who are allowed to vote before, after a new company, they'll still be allowed to vote. So if you're a voting member in Nemaha County Co-op before, in the new company, you'll be able to vote.
This will start in through the ledger credit pools, and we've kind of set this up. Bobby and I have, Tim Doherty will draw this out. It gets a little cumbersome as we read through it. We'll do the best we can, and I think Tim will detail it when we get finished up here. But in order to facilitate the movement of equity to a combined company in a neutral and fair, equitable manner, 3 separate ledger credit pools will be utilized over a 5-year transition period to complete the process. The pools are described below. First is Pool A, equity held by former NCCA patrons who are age 65 and older as of September 1st, 2018. And Pool B, equity held by Ag Partners patrons for fiscal years ending August 31st, 2018 and prior. The ledger credit general pool is equity held by former NCCA members who are age 64 and younger on September 1st, 2018, and equity earned by Ag Partners patrons on business done with the company on and after September 1st, 2018. A little stumble there,
That's a
bud.
mouthful. Equity retirement, how we get that equity back to you, the member. Of course, we were talking that equity retirement is a key decision that your board makes every year. It's based on the balance between the capital needs of the company, the assets, and returning it back to you. With this in mind, the intended plans for the equity retirement is as follows. First and foremost, just like it was in both companies before, estates will have top priority. Second, the money will then be allocated to pools A and B. As described earlier, when the board decides how much can be revolved back to you guys, the members, it will go against 50-50 to pools A and B. The pool A, once patrons reach 70 years of age, they may request a redemption of their equity funds established by the board. It will be applied on the first requested, first paid basis, just like it has been currently up to now. Pool B, equity will be retired to this pool based on the year earned on the old year first, on a pro rata basis.
We'll talk about this date just a little bit, and I'll explain it before I read through, but the November 2nd, 2023 date doesn't quite correspond. If you take 5 years, it is 5 years and 2 months. So the reason that we did that is we extended it 60 days. So if there is a birthday that happens at age 70, 80, the end of August, as we go into that new year, we want to give everybody time to make that request. And we want to give them 60 days to go ahead and make that request before we start transitioning those pools. On November 2nd, 2023, all equity remaining in Pool A, which has not been requested, will be transferred to the General Ledger Credits pool. Equity in Pool A, which has been requested but not yet paid, on November 2nd, 2023, will remain in Pool A and be retired, along with Pool B, as outlined previously. After the requested funds from Pool A have been paid, any remaining funds in Pool B will be transferred to the General Ledger Credit pools. Both A and B at that time will cease to exist. Patrons who have done business with the cooperative for 5 years or more will be eligible to have their ledger credits retired on a pro rata basis. And the goal, and this was important to both boards of both entities, was to come and try to sunset into one pool. There's several of the larger cooperatives, be it in the state of Kansas or be it in the state of Nebraska, that have merged in numerous different times. And there really wasn't a plan. There may have been a plan, but then it got skewed, and they may have 15, 16, 17 pools of equity. And Junior, you're about to run out of battery. Well, that's all right. We're going to have a break here in a minute. But the biggest thing was that your boards of directors wanted this to sunset. And as you can see in what we've read through and what Tim will come up, they will all transfer into that one general ledger credit pool. But it was extremely important to do that and have one pool and make it as fair and equitable as possible as we went through it.
So at this time, Tim will go through basically how a redemption would look like and how to flow through the system.
You got it?
Yeah, would somebody hit the lights back there, so maybe? Hopefully I'll get through this so that we can make the waters a little muddier yet. We've kind of come to the conclusion that we ought to talk about this, let it soak for a couple of days, and then you'll come back and have some good solid questions. But as Stan talked about it, we have two different equity programs. And one's not good and one's bad. They're just different. And so as we look at the NEMAHA program, it's based on age of patron. So that equity lays out there until you hit age 70, then you have the ability to request in Ag Partners, it's retired by the age of equity. Doesn't make any difference how old the patron or the producer is, it's how old is the equity. So what we've tried to do is figure out a process that we can take those two systems, mold them into a common system, and at the same time be fair and equitable across the board. And so here's what we've come up with. As the one thing that you want to remember, whether you're an ag partners or an NCCA, that every dollar of equity that you have today is going to move to the new company. There will be no discounts, there will be no write-ups. And so it'll be dollar for dollar, it's going to move across to the new entity. So what we're going to do with NCCA, we will cancel the equity in NCCA today and issue it into the new company in two pools. If you are greater, or if you are 65 or older on September 1, your equity will roll into what we call Pool A. Those younger than that 65 will roll into what we'll call the general ledger pool. And this will be the ultimate end pool that we get to. If you are an Ag Partners owner of equity, your equity will be moved into Pool B. And so what we've done is we've taken every dollar of equity out of these two entities and we've moved it down here. Now if you'll notice, I put this as well. Any new equity that's earned goes into this pool. That will be the ultimate pool that we look at. So, let's talk about retirement of equity. And, you know, as one of the things I've tried to say at all of the meetings, one of the most important decisions your board's going to make every year is how much equity will we retire. They want to put as much back into the hands of the producer as they can. But one of the things that they have to look at is we need assets to build. We need new grain storage. We need new floaters. We have debt to pay off and so on and so forth. And so they've got to look down the road and have a good idea for how do we maintain the financial stability of the company and at the same time put dollars back in the hands of producers. So that's one of their big decisions. I think the companies the last couple of years have put $650,000, $700,000 a piece out there for equity retirement. So I'm going to use a couple of examples, and Todd Grimes, wherever he's sitting, is going to make sure that I do the math right, because one of the equations that I wrote up in a couple of meetings was backwards, and he never told me until this morning. And so I'm going to make sure he tries to keep me honest. But let's go back and let's use an example. Let's say that the boards come up and determine that we can retire $1 million of equity next year. And so we'll look at $1 million. My mind is simple, so I'm going to use fairly round numbers. Now, what Bobby told us was the first priority of what's going to get retired first is going to be an estate. And so for example purposes, I'm going to say we've got $100,000 worth of estates. So we pay that out, then it comes back and it says there's $900,000 left for retirement. Now, as we look at that $900,000, we have two pools that we're going to focus on retiring that equity. Pool A, Legacy, Nemaha County. Pool B, Legacy Ag Partners. Now, what did we say the companies were? Very similar size, scope, financial strength, and so on and so forth. So from that standpoint, we're going to say, I'm going to take this number and I'm going to divide it by 2. That'll come back to $450,000. I'm going to take $450,000 and I'm going to retire it out of this pool. And I'm going to retire it the same way that it would have been retired out of NCCA, by age of patron. Then I'm going to come and take the other $450,000 and I'm going to move it over here. And I'm going to retire it from Pool B, which is Legacy Ag Partners, by age of equity, the same way that the Legacy Ag Partners company did it. Okay, now, what I'm going to do as well is over time, this pool's going to shrink. And what we want to happen is, as this pool shrinks, and as we come down to this date that Stan mentioned of November 2nd, 2023, remember, you have to request your equity to be retired in this pool. If you don't request that equity to be retired, and we have some entities in that as well that don't have a birth date on them, on November 11/2/23, dollars that have not been requested will be moved to this pool after 5 years. Now, what's the remainder? Will stay here in Pool A. And so it's going to be that has been requested. That's all that's going to remain in that pool after 5 years. We continue with this process, just like we explained here, until this is eliminated, until this is all retired. Once this is retired, Pool A goes away. Pool A goes away. Pool B, what's left in it, will move to general ledger credits. And so, in this example, we come down to the goal of one equity pool. Make sense? Now, we're going to go back through how we're going to retire equity once we get to one pool. We'll make that transition, and so what we're going to do here is we're going to use a method that we're going to call percent of equity. That's how we're going to retire that. And what it also says is that anyone who has done business with the co-op for 5 years or more will be eligible for equity retirement. Nothing's based on age. Nothing's based on age of equity. It's based on if you've done business with the co-op for 5 years or more, you're eligible. So we're going to go back, and Todd, wake up and keep me on track. I'm going to up the ante and say you're going to retire 1.1 million. Same estates in my example. and I'm gonna come down to $1 million that we're gonna retire. Same process that we used before. But here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take that $1 million and I'm gonna divide it by the total amount of equity that is out there. And for simplistic reasons, I'm going to divide it by 20 million. Now, what does that come up with? That equals 5%. Whether I got the equation right or wrong. Is it right this time, Todd? Todd would let me dig my own grave and then he was going to cover it up. He didn't say anything. See, yesterday I was dividing the 20 by the million. And he sat back there and says, no, that's not right. But he didn't say anything. So he let me go through 2 meetings. But anyway, take the 5%. And let's say you've got 50,000 of equity. You take the 5% times your 50,000, and you're going to come up with 2,500 of equity that would be retired. What does the process do? The one thing that we're interested in is, we've got some young producers involved in this group. We want them to be able to participate in equity retirement as early as we can. And we think that part of what this process does is it helps them to understand here is some of that value in that equity, as opposed to waiting until I'm 70 years old, or the other method of retirement by age of equity. And so that's part of the process that we're trying to take it through. And like I said, one of the goals that we're looking at is we want to be as fair and equitable as we can. We're going to transition everything dollar for dollar. We don't want to give one party advantage or disadvantage, but we have allowed for basically a 5-year transition period. And then we'll get to one pool. Guys?
Very good.
I think one of the things that's important to talk about just briefly with that is our board planning session in January. One of our top goals was to rethink our equity program, our age 70, because as you all know, there is a lot of you getting closer and closer to 70 and not a whole lot of people falling behind their shoes. So when you talk about that, that program works really well if everybody's kind of even. You got some young ones, you got some middle ones, you got some older ones. You group them all in there. One day, we would have to tell you, sorry, it's going to take us 5 years to retire equity. We don't want that. No one wants that. I think you might want to talk about your program similar.
Absolutely. It's always board directors. It was their goal when I really came into the company was to try to reach 10 years, to be within 10 years on our equity retirement. We're 11 today, but I can tell you from some of the larger years that we had, no different than what Nemaha County has, for us to stay on that pace, really it's going to be pretty tough for us to stay on track and be within 10 or 11 years. I can see that going out. And our goal was to get within 10 to hopefully touch what Tim talked about, some of the younger producers, but still be active and paying that equity back on the producers that are doing business with us today and stay an active investment in their operations. So we can't stay on track where we're at and stay within 10. Our board understands that, but I think this new equity, once we get to the ledger credit pool, is extremely fair and equitable for both parties.
Who will be able to vote on the combination when and where? Members on record to vote at each cooperative will be eligible to vote. They should have received a notice in the mail for the special meeting to vote on the combination. Special meetings will be held June 28th with voting open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Time frame was picked so that if you're a member of both, because we have several that are members of both, they can vote for both companies. So you can go vote in one and drivers or vote in the other. That will allow plenty of time. Ag Partners Co-op's meeting will be at Fisher Center in Hiawatha. Nemaha County Co-ops will be at Corning Community Center. If you can't go right at 10, we would really appreciate you could go right at 10. We need a quorum to open the meeting to start the voting process. But we are serving a meal if you need to come during that time period as well.
And I think Bobby and I had heard today, we have enhanced our meals, to be honest. I think Bobby and I and a lot of the employees, we're kind of tired of boogers and brats. Not that they're not bad, they're good, but we've changed the menu a little bit, so please come vote. What percentage of approval is needed to vote for the vote to pass? Members voting at each cooperative special meeting will need to approve the combination by at least 2/3. And that is 2/3 of the members that are at the meeting during that time. Other states handle it differently. The Kansas cooperative laws, we have to do it within that meeting. If we sent out a mail ballot back in the state of Kansas, we would need at least 2/3 of that total membership's vote to come back. And we just don't think that we can do that. And if it doesn't come back as 2/3, it is a no vote. Nebraska is a little bit different. They just count the votes if it's a mail-in vote. In the state of Kansas, it isn't. So it's 2/3 of the members that vote during that special meeting.
With that, we'd like to open it up to questions that any of you might have. I know the equity piece is complicated, but it's when you really think it through, it's really the only way to take two complicated pieces and put them together in the end. Like I say, we rethought ours to start with. What questions do you have out there burning in your minds?
I think one of the biggest things too, and we've talked at all of these meetings, if you don't ask a question today, by all means, I mean, call Bobby, talk to your local branch individuals, get your questions answered, because we're not trying to hide anything from anybody, but we want you to be absolutely, your mind is at ease when you go in to vote, that all of those questions have been answered from both organizations. And if there's questions about Ag Partners and our business, by all means, call me. I'll talk to you. We'll get your questions answered. I just think it's extremely important that there's no hesitation or reservation as you go to vote.
I know one of the things that's asked almost every meeting, or at least a couple of them, has been, how did you come up with Ag Partners name? Why are you sticking with that? One piece, it's a good name if you really think about it, and they've been a good partner of ours. 2 years ago when we were doing this process, we looked up, we had about 30 names to process, and 3 came back that were available, and none of us liked those 3. That was one of the difficult things about 2 years ago. I think this time it was Ag Partners is a good name. It makes it not so specific. Nemaha County Cooperative name is really, there's a lot of pride out there to it. I think it fits though. Ag Partners being a cooperative, our mission statement is dedicated service, dedicated to you. Ag Partners, meaning you're a partner in ag. It's very, very appropriate, I believe. Part of that process too was then where would the office be, which is really important to both the companies as well. And that's part of the reason Seneca was picked for that as part of that. I think it's really important to think it through, you know, looking long-term forward. And as you grow, to have a more generic name is probably appropriate in the future. That's really how we kind of come up with that name. Any questions that you all have?
I know the question also too, Bobby, was brought up, you know, obviously, you know, even 5 years ago, we kind of started a process to talk. 2 years ago, we did the same thing. And so why are we doing it today? I think there's a lot of change in the marketplace, a lot of change in the economics. I think probably one of the biggest things that where we're at today is, you know, there was 3 cooperatives trying to go together 2 years ago. Obviously, the third one was a smaller cooperative, not similar to what Nemaha and Ag Partners are today, and it makes a lot more sense. But we did need to go through that exercise 2 years ago to really be where we're at today and have those conversations. But just us together, as a slide shown, I mean, there are 2 very, very similar cooperatives going together, and what Bobby and I both feel will be a stronger, better cooperative to service, obviously, you, the member owners of it.
And I believe 2 years ago, well, I think 5 years ago and 2 years ago when we started talking, it was more brought up from the general manager side, maybe we should talk. And the original conversations this time started at the board of director level. So in both teams, 2 years ago, the management teams weren't really involved. And from the very start, this time around, starts from the board of directors, and the management teams have both been involved from the very beginning. So a lot different than 2 years ago.
And we've had, I mean, great conversations in all departments, agronomy, energy, accounting, grain, where those employees from both organizations have been together and been talking. And I mean, really from about day one, Bobby, as we've come forward, and they've been excellent, excellent conversations. So the people know each other. It is great. I mean, I walked in here today and the last few days, and obviously I've met a lot of them, but it does. It feels like a team. It feels like a family, and that's what the cooperative should be.
Question, Jess?
So the equity at Nemaha, for me, is I hit 70, I just go like normal, just tell them I wanna get it.
Yes. Yeah, as
Just
long as
wait
you're,
till then.
yeah, as long as you're for that if you're gonna turn 70 within 5 years, yeah, it's the same.
Wait till you're 70 and do it.
Yep. Then apply, yep. Good question.
Thank you, Bobby.
Yes.
What if, like he was saying, if you turn 70 within those 5 years and you haven't allocated enough money to retire your full equity, what happens then?
It stays out there, you're gonna have first priority. So nothing else gets retired until that pool A is completely, if you've requested it, it stays out there until it's paid.
But you might not get it all the day you turn 70 then.
Correct. It could be a potential, the goal is to have it completely paid though, before we get there.
So then you're gonna penalize the guy that turns 70, but the guys that have been in the thing 5 years start getting theirs back already.
No, that pool A is the priority pool. We won't start into the new company until that pool is exhausted.
Yeah, no money's gonna go towards any of the other, well, pools A and B will, for 5 years, we're paying those first, nothing else.
That is the priority pool, is pool A. And simply, I mean, if it doesn't get paid, which I hope we do, but if we would run into 3 years of really extreme drought and we wouldn't have the finances, that's where that scenario would come. I think Nemaha County, you know, they've missed 1 year, and I think, Regis, that was the farmland. When it was out there is really the only time that it wasn't honored, and that was, I mean, it just happens. We want to pay that is the priority pool, but obviously in our business, we can't control everything.
And that's been the similar thing, at the Nemaha County Co-op every year, if we had the potential in 1 year to have $2 million requested, there's no way we could pay that today. I mean, we could, but it would put a lot of stress on a lot of things that we're doing. So, but luckily, we've never had that. It's just been luck that we haven't had that many people come in. So we want to go away from that to where you feel like, we want to make sure that we can do it as we've said that we're going to do it. So in that pool A, people at 65 now, up to their turn 70, their top priority. Other questions? Well, if you do have more questions, please feel free to ask any one of our location managers. They can get a hold of the management team. If you have a question with Ag Partners, we can get a hold of Stan and his team. For the most important part, though, is it doesn't matter how large you are or how small you are, your focus counts. We need you there. It would really be bad if 100 people decided the fate of Nemaha County Cooperative and Ag Partners, and that could happen. So please go. It's very, very important, regardless of how you stand. I don't think any of us is trying to force you to do anything. We just think that looking forward, the most important thing to do is be proactive and think together. Some of the things that we're going to have to do in the future requires a lot of capital, just like you as producers, you have to buy bigger and larger equipment. It's just taking more and more.
I just like to say from Ag Partners, thank you for attending today. I will, and some of my team, board of directors, we'll hang around here for a little while. If it's a one-off question, by all means, come grab me and we'll have the conversation. I'll answer it to the best of my ability. But thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you all for coming.